So, it's official. EA have sold the company to a private investment group consisting of the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, the PIF, Jared Kushner's affinity partners, and Silver Lake in a deal worth $55 billion. This is a huge deal, and it will fundamentally change the way EA exists as a company. But what does it mean for us gamers, particularly those of us who are excited for Battlefield 6? I've seen lots of crazy takes on the internet about this deal and plenty of fear-mongering on Twitter and Reddit. So I've decided to do a bunch of research, and I'm here to tell you what's actually happening and how it could affect Battlefield 6. Will it lead to a pivot away from violent games or strict censorship on the themes and topics presented in the game? Is everything going mobile and free to play? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. So, the deal itself. EA is being bought for $55 billion. That's about $36 billion from the firms who are buying the company, as well as nearly $20 billion in loans. And that's important. I'll come back to that later. It means the firms will have to pay that back to the banks that they're borrowing it from. It's being bought by a consortium of buyers, which means a few different groups are pooling together to buy it, but the main three are the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, I'll call this the PIF from now because that's a lot to say, Jared Kushner's Affinity Partners, which is a private equity group, and a fund called Silver Lake. One important aspect of the deal is that this will take EA private. The people selling EA are essentially the shareholders of the company, who could be anyone right now because EA is a public company. All of the public shares will be bought in this deal, so the private groups involved will be the only ones with any say in how the company's run. That means no more need for public shareholder meetings, no more worrying about the stock price, and no more public scrutiny of how the business is doing. So the private owners will be a much bigger deal. So who are they? First of all, the Saudi Arabian PIF. This is a huge fund that has been active for many years, investing in all sorts of businesses all over the world. They already owned nearly 10% of EA before this started, and they have stakes in other video game publishers like Take-Two, Nintendo, Capcom, Embracer, and Ubisoft. It's worth making note of those names just now, especially Take-Two because they published Grand Theft Auto. We'll sort of come back to that. They've recently started acquiring ownership of some gaming-related companies in their entirety, including Niantic, who are the ones who created Pokemon Go, Scopely, who created Monopoly Go, which is an insanely popular game. I know lots of sort of hardcore gamers probably don't think of it, but Monopoly Go is a big deal. And the ESL, who are that sort of group that host gaming tournaments in Dota and Counter-Strike. The chair of the PIF is Mohammed bin Salman, who's the ruler of Saudi Arabia, who's been mired in controversies surrounding human rights in Saudi Arabia and in their foreign affairs, and who has also been publicly working to open up aspects of Saudi Arabia to a more international audience through hosting sports events, inviting musicians to perform in Saudi Arabia, and increasing tourism through projects like Qiddiya, which will soon have a Six Flags theme park with the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the world. That's not like one of those pipe dream plans. They've built the roller coaster, it already exists. And Saudi Arabia's second F1 track. Jared Kushner's affinity partners are heavily bankrolled by the PIF already. They're the main investors in it, as well as investors from the UAE and Qatar, so it's no great surprise to see them kind of working together on this. They also invest in a wide variety of other companies, but I couldn't find any reference to involvement that they have with video game companies before this. The interesting point for this group is that Jared Kushner is Donald Trump's son-in-law, and he was involved in his government during his first presidency, acting at times as a campaign manager and then being at the forefront of talks with the Middle East. After leaving government, he then set up Affinity Partners, earning a huge amount of money from investors in the Middle East. So there have been accusations that this showed a clear conflict of interest, with him profiting enormously from that government work. Also, during Donald Trump's first government, he talked about violent video games and them being a problem. I don't think anything really much came of that, but it's worth noting. Silver Lake is a private equity group that's based out of California. They have a history of providing investment to mostly technology companies. They've invested heavily in loads of massive brands like Airbnb, Twitter, AMC, Unity, Symantec. They bought Skype from eBay and then sold it to Microsoft for way more money. They invest in Dell. The only video game connections I could really see for Silver Lake are that they invest in Unity, the people who make the Unity game engine, and Zynga Games, which is the company that made Farmville. So, what will the effect of this investment consortium owning EA actually be? First of all, EA have already stated that Andrew Wilson, who's the current CEO, will be staying in position. They're not looking to make big changes there. That should probably be seen as a good indication that this is more about wanting to make money from EA rather than controlling how they operate. Secondly, the purchase involves taking on debt of nearly $20 billion. That's a pretty huge number, and numerous economics news outlets have been kind of focusing on this as a possible point of concern for the company. There will be a lot of pressure to make profit in the short term to try and pay down that debt. So there will be a lot of scrutiny on the success of Battlefield 6 and this year's set of sports games like Madden. We've already seen some high-profile cancellations of games from EA, like the unannounced Titanfall game and the Black Panther game, and I wouldn't be surprised to see more risky projects cancelled like that in favour of the big cash cows like Madden and The Sims. I also wouldn't be too surprised to see some aggressive monetization for Battlefield 6. We're already used to seeing battle passes and microtransactions in the game, and I'd expect that to continue, probably with more of a push than what we've seen before. Related to that, the PIF saw success with their purchase of Niantic and Silver Lake with their investment in Zynga. These are companies that focus on mobile and free-to-play games. We already know the Battlefield 6 Battle Royale will be free-to-play and separate from the main game, and I'd expect to see a huge amount of support for that, as opposed to what happened with Battlefield 5's Firestorm. EA already put a huge focus into microtransactions across their library of games, but particularly with like the FC games, Madden, The Sims, even things like Need for Speed. They've constantly experimented with bringing their franchises to mobile as well, albeit with mixed success with things like Apex Mobile. I'm pretty sure that's shut down recently. For Battlefield, I wouldn't be surprised to see a mobile version of the game sometime sooner rather than later. And while I can wish for something like the old Commander mode, you know, where you could sit on a tablet and sort of get involved in a game like that, I think it's more likely that it'll be more like a free-to-play version of the game made by a third party, like how we saw like Warzone Mobile or COD Mobile and things like that. Now, the big concern for many gamers online is that the involvement of the Saudi Arabian PIF and even that of Jared Kushner could lead to censorship in EA games, that the developers won't be allowed to do what they want to do. Saudi Arabia has famously had strict morality laws for decades, and many popular games have been banned there, including Final Fantasy XVI and The Last of Us Part 2 for content related to homosexuality. GTA 5 was also banned originally due to sexual content, violence and drug use, but was recently unbanned in July of this year and given a new 21 plus age rating. I thought that's kind of interesting because this PIF group that is chaired by the guy that rules the country invests in Take-Two, and their main source of profit is from Grand Theft Auto. So slightly weird there. And they also banned Call of Duty 4 just because of how it portrayed Saudi Arabia. I don't think they banned the other Call of Duty games. While this kind of censorship is clearly ridiculous to me, it might be worth noting that it's more of a legal technicality rather than something that's actively enforced. Supposedly, and I'm basing this just on what I've read online, it is still very easy to buy banned games from many stores in Saudi Arabia. And like other countries that ban games, people can often buy and play digital versions of the games using VPNs and foreign storefronts and things like that. The nature of censorship in Saudi Arabia is changing. It's usually been enacted on religious grounds, but the ruler of Saudi Arabia, the guy who is also the chairman of the PIF, has been working on limiting the powers of the religious courts and groups, particularly when it comes to foreign media and, importantly, investment. If they can make money from it, they're maybe going to be more lenient on it. So, will Battlefield 6 get censored? I'd assume almost definitely not. The Saudi Arabian PIF owns the ESL right now, which has kept up their Counter-Strike tournaments as one of their core franchises, along with events for PUBG and Call of Duty Mobile. They've invested heavily in Ubisoft, that obviously makes a bunch of violent games, and even went so far as to pay for a special edition to Assassin's Creed Mirage, which features Saudi Arabia. I feel like we're more likely to get things pushing a positive view of Saudi Arabia like that. Maybe camos for soldiers in Battlefield 6 connected to the country. We're more likely to get that than we are to get things removed from the game for being too violent. The LGBT issues are more difficult and interesting. For Battlefield, it's obviously less of a concern because sexuality doesn't really come into urban warfare, but for games like Mass Effect or The Sims, huge franchises that do have plenty to do with sexuality, it could be more of a problem. I genuinely don't know how they're going to tackle that. We haven't really had this kind of situation before, with what amounts to a country with backwards views on sexuality actually owning a video game publisher that publishes games developed by people in other countries who don't share those views. My gut instinct, and that's all it is that they won't interfere, and that whether or not those games get sold in Saudi Arabia is largely irrelevant to them funding them. They'll just care about making their money back. I don't think this is a deal where they're trying to change what EA is doing outside of how they can make them more money. Alienating a major part of your audience is not a good way to make more money. So that's the deal. Obviously, we'll get more details over the coming weeks and months, and if there's anything interesting that changes, I'll be sure to let you know. Let me know in the comments if I've missed anything or made any mistakes with this, and let me know if you enjoy this sort of video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye!